Very good. I find myself back in the village. It's just my mother and I finishing up the last little things in the kitchen. But there's a little ray of sunshine left, and I have a little bit of battery left on the computer. So we're going to make the house discard video. That is to select this house. We went to see many others, some better, some worse, and I wanted to show you more or less a little bit above what were our discards. Until we got this one. We saw it more or less in the middle of the houses. We went to see what happens. Well, we will see it before we start analyzing the houses. We're going to talk about the things we wanted and what we wanted a house to fulfill. In this case, we were looking for a house that was for about 10 people. That is, it had about 45 bedrooms. It was big, so it could come. Whole families, and with families, I don't mean families of 4 people, but families of 2, 3 whole families. I mean 4 more, 48. So they could come to celebrate, well, Christmas and holidays. In short, it was a house that could accommodate quite a few people. The second thing is that we were looking for a house that had been renovated, but not a super drastic renovation. Although that term, well, I don't know if we fully met it. Thirdly, and almost more important than the other two, it's that it wasn't a very, very old house. That is, it wasn't 60, 70 years old. That even though it had a lot of renovations, there wouldn't be a need to make new drains, new installation, etc., etc. That more or less the most essential things could be kept, so to speak. Another important requirement is that it would cost less than 150,000 euros. And finally, that it would be in an area close to other houses, not super lost in the mountain. And preferably that it had something nearby, like a beach or a well-known mountain or something. So, if you don't want to be alone at home later and you want to go visit things, you could do it. So we came across the first house of all the ones we went to see. We're going to see them side by side, because I hardly remember the truth. In total, we visited over 10 houses, but I only recorded 10 of them. The ones that were no longer worth it because they were extremely bad, or there were other reasons why we discarded them, well, I didn't record them. This first house was good, a bit showy. All I can say is that my mother, when we left to see her, said that she was stepping aside, that she preferred not to participate, and so on. Imagine, this house was divided into 2 floors, including the upper floor. We couldn't get in because we went, but the real estate agent called us and told us he couldn't make it on time. And of course, since we are far away and have to work, he told us to go in and look at the bottom and top floors, so from pictures you can more or less imagine it. So, well, we went into the bottom floor and basically on the bottom floor. There was nothing, it was all empty, there were no windows or doors, the walls were such that everything had to be done, everything. The floor that we went to see was more or less half decent, or so it seemed in photos, and the house was not too old. But there was one thing, and it was another requirement that fell within what we wanted, and we didn't know if we could get it or not, so it was not an indispensable requirement either. And here in this area, as there are many ups and downs, there are many houses that have an embankment. Let's say they make a beastly slope, so all the patios, all the terraces slope downwards. But one thing we didn't like too much because it limits you a lot when designing a terrace. Well, this was the clear example of a terrace ravine because it was at different levels. There was a small terrace followed by stairs leading down to another small terrace. They had tried to adapt the terrace to the unevenness that was there in some way. The areas where there was a terrace, some were better and others were terrible. It should also be said that this first house we went to see was very economical, well below the price we were looking for. We had to investigate the situation ourselves, as you can never rule out such a possibility. Logically, the shrubs were practically up to our height, but well, that's the case everywhere. They were like that in this one too, so we can't really say anything about that. The outside of the house wasn't bad, it was exposed brick, and well, personally, I didn't think it was super mega bad. But it's true that after looking a little bit, objectively, there were many things to do. Especially because there was nothing on the lower floor, everything had to be done new, and that was going to be a lot of work. We discarded this one because there was nothing on the lower floor. Second reason, the unevenness of the terrace, and third reason, because it was a bit small. Just like here, we are going to do the renovation down here, and we can live upstairs. There we had to live in the renovation itself. The lower floor would take many years to complete, as logically, with nothing there, one can only imagine. We moved on to the second house. We couldn't even get in to see this house. We liked it a lot, but we couldn't even get in. We ruled it out even before we could get in. There were reasons for this. The house was small, with only 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, if I recall correctly. It was small for what we were looking for. It's not that it was small in itself, because it was a big house for a family that simply wanted a house. It was more than enough, but for what we wanted, it is true that it did not meet that requirement the same way. But it was so good that we said, wow, we have to see what's going on. When we started to inquire about this house, it turns out that the record showed it as under construction. And this also needs to be taken into account because houses that are under construction and not completely finished require another type of permits. And bureaucratically, a lot of things. So we discarded, we saw all the ones that were under construction, but as soon as we said it, it was completely discarded. Even more, I spoke with a builder I knew and asked him, well, what were the steps to register a house that is under construction? To declare it finished, because they were nearly done. Oh, when he told me everything, I said, oh my goodness, no, that's a lot of hassle. For someone who is eager and such. In our case, it's not about spirit, but about the certificate. We backed off a bit, but, well, all things considered, with the requirements they ask for, which are not many, it can be done easily. But imagine how long we are taking to get light. Imagine a house that is under construction. Look, no, the 3rd house we went to see, my mother and I loved it. I left there and said it has to be this one. I loved the views it had. It was beautiful on the outside. It was very cool. The truth, it was very beautiful. Problem with this house? The upper floor was a bit small. It had 4 bedrooms, but there was 1 very small, and then the bathroom was tiny. It was divided into 2 floors, but one drawback was the lack of connection between them. That is, you had to go outside to be able to go to the lower floor. It was a bit of a hassle, because of course if you take it with family, but maybe I don't know. It's a big family, but the charm is in being able to be together and then each one to their room. Even if there are 2 floors and a door separates you, that's great, but having to go outside, I don't know. We're not entirely convinced by that, although I must say that I absolutely loved this house. Another big drawback it had, and possibly the reason why we discarded it is because it was very old. It was a house that was about 60 or more years old. You can already tell by the furniture that's there, by the wallpaper, and especially by the bathroom. The bathroom was very indicative of the era this house was from. So all the water installations, all the electrical installations, everything had to be done anew. Not to mention the kitchen. Absolutely nothing could be salvaged from the kitchen, although in the end we have made it new here. But anyway, another reason why we discarded this house. Even though the downstairs was really beautiful, it had stone just the way I like it. Well, very beautiful. It was tucked into a hollow. As I tell you, there are some houses that have the terraces like this. Most of them here, almost everything slopes downwards. In fact, I think this one that we've taken was the only one we went to see that was all flat. It's true that when you go up the car ramp, you have a little bit of a slope, but everything else is flat. It's more or less at the same height. There are some little things that go down and up, but they are not slopes of this style, unlike all the others. There was a lot of unevenness, and this was another case. It was very uneven. The house was falling down, and we noticed that there was a lot of humidity among many trees, that there was some that was a little bit stuck in. In Sokavon, we noticed significant humidity. Perhaps later, when the sun comes out, it won't be as humid. But the thermal sensation was a bit like that. In fact, this was more or less at the beginning. Of April, May really was a good time. It wasn't spring and such. But inside the house, especially on the ground floor, not so much on the upper floor, you could feel that chill, damp chill, I wouldn't know how to tell you. The ground floor also required a lot of work. That too, in something we said, oysters, it throws us a bit back because it was basically an open floor, there was nothing. So we needed to make bedrooms, a separate kitchen, because of course being separate rooms without a staircase to join them, it also needed a kitchen downstairs. And in short, there was nothing. The kitchen, what was most similar to a kitchen was this, which was a small room where there was practically nothing. So, we also discarded it. We arrived at house number 4, where in this case the real estate person did come, but they forgot the keys. I don't remember if they forgot the keys or if those property keys didn't work, if they had changed the lock, I don't remember. We couldn't enter, but from the outside it was a beautiful, eye-catching house. We're not going to say anything about the bushes because it's more or less the same in all of them. These are old houses with fast-growing bushes that keep growing despite frequent trimming. This house was very cute, but it was probably for a family of 4 or 5 people with a small terrace. I haven't mentioned this, but another important requirement is that it had a terrace to be able to make a sort of villa. A large pool is a must if you don't have a pool in a house. So it's like away from the areas of interest, let's say. It's not central in a population. I don't see the point. I mean, it has to have entertainment things in the house itself. Otherwise, you get bored. No matter how much you're here with your family, having a celebration, Christmas or whatever, it can get very heavy after a week. So, well, we needed a terrace, and this one didn't have one. It had a very small piece of terrace, but it was tiny, and the house itself was also small. But what really finished us off, and why we discarded it, but I don't have images of this, it's that to get to the house you had to climb some stairs, which were like that because it was built on a height. There was a lot of unevenness, but they had taken advantage of that unevenness to build up and make some stairs completely vertical to be able to get to the house. And well, when we climbed that, we said we don't go to house number 5, which I don't remember. It must be very cool. In fact, we were about to. If it hadn't been a lie, if it hadn't been this one, we would have stayed with another one that I haven't shown yet. But we liked this one a lot, and we also informed ourselves a lot. It was very beautiful, but the problem it had was the same as the second one, if I'm not mistaken. It was also under construction, the registration was under construction, and that was a lot of hassle. And when they told us, it was already next, and in fact it was very new. It had a pretty decent terrace. It wasn't as big as this one, maybe half, but it was more than enough. Making a pool and stuff was very good. House number 6, which is probably familiar to you. The real story of this house is that the key didn't work. We couldn't get in to see it on the first day. When we saw it from outside, my father said there's no need to call. As you could see from the street, that significant renovation had been done. From the outside, you've seen the facade, and my father advised against calling, saying it's not worth it, but I said, no, I'm going to call, and the next time we come to see other houses, we're going to see this one. We totally did it again. We were able to open the outside part, but we couldn't open the inside part of the house. And I say, it can't be, seriously, what's wrong? These houses, well, they seem to change a lot. Locks, I don't know how many, I don't know. There are many issues with the key thing. We could see the exterior, but couldn't enter the interior. My father literally told me he wouldn't want this house, even if it was given to him. And I say, well, let's see. I don't want it either. I mean, it was really bad, really. It was very bad on the outside especially, but I had seen pictures of the inside, and the inside didn't seem to me to be as bad as the outside. But of course, since I didn't know if the photos were current or not, because it also looked very outdated and it had been a long time since they were updated, I say I don't know if it will be like that or not. So time passed, and in this whole process, we might have spent about 6 months looking for a house. And well then, on one of these, on a third occasion, when we came to see other houses, I took advantage. I reached out to the real estate agency and asked if they had the keys to the house. They confirmed they did, so I suggested we go see it. We went in and we were on the upper floor, and I don't know, it was like that feeling of it's cool, it's beautiful. And in fact, I think around here in this area, while I'm recording, there are a couple of scenes, and if not, it's that I have it recorded in my mind in which you can see my parents like this, and they're kind of smiling, you know, like, well, it's not bad at all, huh? It's cool. And yes, we kept looking, we kept seeing, and we were convinced. But we didn't keep it at that very moment, but we said, well, let's keep looking and see how things evolve. It is true that when you see it like this, in the dark, all the windows were boarded up, everything super dirty. Do you find it hard to imagine how it could turn out nice? It might be hard, but I like to imagine it. I have quite a vision for that. However, I understand it's difficult to say this has to look nice when it's ready to be torn down. In fact, we showed the images to my brother and he said, Bella, but that's in ruins, please, what a horrible thing. I say, yes, in part, yes, it's pretty bad, but this is going to look so nice when it's changed. This is the story of this house. We saw it in house number 6. They are also in chronological order. We kept looking and we came across house number 7. This house was really a mess. There was no way to handle it. The whole house stank of dampness. The wall at the bottom was half fallen. The rooms were busted and it made me very sad because the views were spectacular and it was very big. for the price it had. And this house was close to 100,000 euros and it was huge. Now it had a renovation. Although not very old, it lacked a proper kitchen, with only a garage, serving as a makeshift cooking area. They put in a water outlet and a drain, and used that as a kitchen, so there wasn't really a kitchen room per se. And then, to top it off, it was the ground floor. I mean, there was humidity that reached the top of the walls. The smell was tremendously unpleasant. It was very bad, very bad, very bad, very bad. The bathrooms were like something out of a horror movie. That there, please, it was good, it was a mess. This house, and in itself well arranged, had many possibilities because it was big, it was spacious, it had incredible views. But this was for you to dedicate yourself. A company could take it and hit it, causing a tremendous shake-up. Or a person who is not in a hurry and says, well, even if it takes 5 or 6 years, then I will have it then, and it's like that so well. We discarded it right after entering. House number 8 was a very cute house, which caught our attention a lot, especially because it had a pool, and that, wow, if it already had a pool, we had a lot to gain. We were very excited when we went to see this house, but we became disillusioned as we went in. The reason is similar to the others. We found it small for what we wanted. For a family it was perfect, but for 10 people it was very small. We tried to see how we could expand it and give more space so that the house could accommodate more people, but it was practically impossible. And then on the terrace, well, we encountered the same problem as with other houses. There were terraces, it was uneven, and well, we had to play around with those terraces. And it was also more complicated when it came to designing, but it was very cute. The truth is, we discarded it because of its size. Mainly, we got to house number 9, but before we settled on any. We wanted to see everything there, absolutely everything. I wasn't going to rule out anything, including any junk. I mean, everything that came up, and they called me to show me, I went. Because you can never know when it's going to be the right one. I mean, sometimes a photo deceives you, for better or worse. That happens a lot, so we went to see all of them. The next one was a house that was also very beautiful on the outside, but it was very small. I would almost say it was the smallest there was. It was also very well priced. But the bedrooms were tiny. I mean, there was just enough room for a bed, and that's it. And there were 3 very small ones. And also one thing that surprised me, and I didn't like at all, is that it was divided into 2 floors. There was a bathroom, and it was on the upper floor. I thought, oh my, I mean, you're peeing and you're downstairs, and you have to go up the stairs, down the stairs, you're peeing along the way. I wasn't very convinced by it now. The exterior was beautiful. I mean, it was very nice. Besides, it had a glass window in the dining room. It was a nice house for a couple to enjoy with a child, or at most 2. And the exterior, yes, the exterior was very nice. In fact, we took a tour around the entire outside. We couldn't get into the garage. It was boarded up, but the exterior, even though it had terraces, was quite well distributed. The land was like the house, and from about halfway of the house forward, there was another large terrace. So if a pool could have been made, it would have been very cute. It was a nice house. But the bathroom thing I see as a major flaw, maybe a bathroom could have been added. By redistributing and reorganizing the bottom part, a toilet and sink could have been made, which would have been sufficient. However, we discarded it due to its size. And the 10th house. This is the house we would have chosen if this one hadn't come up. It was a little bit more expensive, but it was also newer. It's close to 30, a little over 30 years old, and this one was 25, something like that, years old. It had a very large, very beautiful patio, and they also had a kind of garage, which, well, that garage was so scary, you'd think a bear was going to come out of there. It was in total darkness. We encountered the same problem as a previous house. I don't remember what number it was between one floor and the other. It had 2 floors, but there was no connection between the floors. That is, you had to go outside to be able to enter, but this one was almost worse than the other because you had to go outside, go down to the patio, go to an entrance door. You had to go all the way around the house to get to the lower floor. Doesn't that seem a bit strange to me? Yes, it is true that for 2 independent families it was quite good. And probably, yes, a stair union could be made, but we couldn't enter the lower floor because there were no keys, so we could only see the upper floor. The upper floor was very good. In fact, the windows, if I remember correctly, were aluminum. The kitchen could be used very well, too. I almost tell you that if it had been this kitchen, we might even have been able to consider painting the doors. Several pieces of furniture were missing, but it's uncertain if it's the same situation. We could have done something in the somewhat fixed kitchen, and you can see that it's quite new, right? Let's see, quite right, but newer than the others we've seen. Well, if the rooms were spacious, it had 3 rooms on the upper floor, and downstairs, we believe it also had another 3, so in reality there were 6 bedrooms, although they were on different floors. The only thing that perhaps didn't quite convince us was the fact that, well, to get to your terrace, you had to go down some very steep stairs, and naturally it wasn't by the dining room. Unless we had joined the 2 rooms with an interior staircase and used the lower part for the dining room, kitchen, and a bedroom, and all the bedrooms upstairs. If we hadn't arranged something like that, it would have been difficult to have like the terrace at the foot of the house. Let's not say that, but it was a good house. Actually, if this one hadn't become available, it was our second choice. Obviously, without seeing the lower floor, we couldn't have accepted, let's say we had to have seen the lower floor and so on. But when we saw this one, we started to evaluate all the ones we had seen up to that point to see the pros and cons of each one. And the truth is that we spent a lot of time evaluating, and we thought this is the one we have chosen. It had everything we wanted. It was within our budget. Everything was on level, it was high up, and not like others that were more in a pit and didn't get as much light. There was no humidity inside the house. Precisely because of that, because of all the sun and light it gets, it was very well insulated. In fact, you've already seen the walls of the house. It has very good insulation. The temperature is not cold if you're inside, even though it's winter season. It had all the bedrooms we wanted, and also more or less the 2 floors were half done, so that was something that played to our advantage. So I proposed to my parents the possibility of doing that, of living upstairs and renovating the downstairs floor. While we were, doing the work, little by little we started seeing this house in a slightly better light. As we were seeing others, the topic of this house always came up, and when we finished seeing this one, as soon as we left, we called the real estate agency that managed this house. We spoke with them to make an offer for it, and this was a bit of the house's story. Everything we were looking for, it's true that it maybe had more work than we wanted. We didn't want it to have so much work. That's why this last one that I show you. Maybe it didn't have as much renovation as this one, but this one had other things that we loved and that no other one had. So we thought, maybe we have to try a little harder. Maybe we have to extend it 1 or 2 more years. The renovation has many possibilities. Not only in size, but we saw the overall structure as better than others we had gone to see. So we made an offer for this one. After leaving the last one, after some negotiations, we reached an agreement and kept it. A few months have already passed since then. Actually, I think it was the end of June, and we are now, in November, very happy, honestly. And now that I'm looking at the houses that Jolene, of course, so many months ago, it's not really that long ago, but it feels like a very long time ago for these houses. And it was the same year. Although it hasn't been that long, years have passed since then, and it feels like a significant amount of time has gone by. And now that I see them and remember them again, I think it was the best choice we could make. And of all the ones we went to see, without a doubt, if I had to choose again, I would stick with this one. We are undoubtedly very happy and, very excited to make it as beautiful as possible. I left a house which I visited a long time ago, but I'm not sure why I don't have the details in this folder. It was like the beginning of starting to see all the houses, and it was in an area a little further away from here. These are all more or less not in the same development, but all things considered, they are more or less in the area. And this house was quite good, and it was quite new. For the price, it was well below. And the drawback we found was, again, the slope it had. In this case, the slope was in the house itself. You had to go down from floor to floor. That house was no more than 10 to 15 years old. It was quite new, although it was in bad shape. It was pretty. It was a cute house. But in my opinion, the fact that it was staggered downwards could be the same. Problems for the future with humidity, if it doesn't have good insulation, or in our case, the lack of bedrooms. It only had 3, and they were distributed in a somewhat strange way. 1 on the top floor and 2 on the last floor. In the end, we found it a bit stranger, especially that house. I would have loved to live there myself. You set your own rules and you're living there. I think it was very beautiful, but for what we wanted, it just didn't fit. Obviously, everyone needs different things. We were going with a different mindset. We also had to adjust to what we wanted and needed, like someone else looking for a different type of house. And well, that's it for the video of all the houses we went to see. Why did we finally choose this one? I hope you liked it. I don't know if you liked another one more than this. If so, let me know in the comments. We'll see you soon in upcoming videos. See you then.